So yes, we use all sources of information, including the safety investigations, to determine the root cause and to address the root cause through mitigations and controls. What I'm focused on is increasing the safety posture across all of our platforms and eliminate mishaps to the max extent possible by proactively managing each one of our aircraft.
I'd like to know if you'll commit to give that access to members of this committee.
Congressman, it remains important to protect the safety privilege for those who participate in those safety investigations.
You understand that that's ironic, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but that's disrespectful to this body.
And I'm asking you to ground this aircraft until we get the clutch figured out.
What aircraft would the Navy use to transport that F-35 engine ashore to be fixed?
So I genuinely mean thank you for the question, because I do believe in this committee's oversight responsibilities, and I appreciate the opportunity to thank you for that.
Mr. Belk, come on. What plane would the Navy use to transport the broken F-35 engine?
Congressman, I don't know the answer.
This is a hearing in the House Oversight Committee on the V-22 Osprey program. The stated reason that they held this hearing was because of the safety concerns with the V-22 program and platform. The safety concerns are after multiple crashes, which have led to the deaths of service members.
The urgent search for answers after 3 U.S. Marines are killed in an Osprey crash. At least 5 others were seriously injured during a routine training mission in Australia.
Military aircraft crashed. The U.S. Marine officials confirmed to us it was a V-22 Osprey. Here's a look at where that crash happened. The plane went down near Glamis. That's on Coachella Canal Road off the 78. This is video just into our newsroom of the area shortly after the crash.
An American military aircraft has crashed off the coast of Japan. The country's Coast Guard confirming to NBC News this morning that it was a U.S. military CV-22 Osprey aircraft that went down off the coast of Yakushima in southwestern Japan. The aircraft's left engine appeared to be on fire as it descended towards the sea.
The Marine Corps now saying 5 Marines died in a crash of a military aircraft outside San Diego yesterday.
So as you can see, this aircraft has not performed particularly well over the last few years, to say the least. And after watching this hearing, I did not come away with a lot of confidence that they have it under control. One reason for that, very simply, is because it's a government-controlled operation. But in addition to that, according to the Pentagon's own numbers, only 40 to 50% of these aircrafts are operational. Multiple members of Congress are calling for this entire program to be shut down and to move on to something else. But it appears as though the Pentagon is choosing to move forward with this, and they think that they can fix the problems that are causing the crashes in the first place.
Okay, I'm pleased to introduce our witnesses here today. From left to right, Mr. Peter Belk, performing the duties of Assistant Secretary of Defense for Readiness, come over from the Pentagon. In this capacity, he's the Principal Advisor to the Secretary of Defense and Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. Next, we have Vice Admiral Carl Chebi, the Commander of Naval Air Systems Command. He's a skilled fighter pilot and has served in several operational capacities. He's also had an array of program management experience on various air platforms. And finally, Mr. Gary Kurtz is the Program Executive Director for Air Anti-Submarine Warfare, Assault, and Special Mission Programs. He oversees the acquisition and the total life cycle support for a diverse range of programs, including the V-22 Joint Program Office.
Admiral, has the DoD been actively using information from the safety investigations in the Osprey crashes to determine modifications to improve the system?
Sir, thank you for that question. As I mentioned in my statement, we use data continuously through the life of a program to identify the risks that are for that platform. More importantly, to make sure we identify the controls and the mitigations that we can put in place to minimize or to eliminate that risk from ever occurring with the aircraft. So yes, we use all sources of information, including the safety investigations, to determine the root cause and to address the root cause through mitigations and controls.
2 questions, Admiral. If you've, the first one is, have you collected data on whether or not these failures have increased or decreased since these modifications have been made? And second question is, will you commit to providing this data to the committee if it exists?
Sir, can you clarify your first question? I just want to make sure I answer it.
Have you collected data on whether the Osprey failures have increased or decreased since the modifications have been made? And if there's data that you have collected, will you share it with the committee?
Okay, I just want to since the modifications have been made, I just want to make sure I'm addressing yours.
Okay.
So we take all the information on. If there are repeat issues that are causing risk to our platform or to our aircrew, we take the appropriate actions to put the controls in place to minimize or to remove that risk from the platform.
But there's no data?
I'm
talking about just simply measures. You take actions, but we want to make sure those actions are effective. And I apologize because I only have a limited amount of time here. Admiral, how many deaths have occurred from accidents on the Osprey?
Sir, I'll answer it in two different ways. Since I have been in the seat in the last 2.5 years, we have lost 4 aircraft and 20 of our service members. Many of the service members' families are right behind me right now.
And do you know the total number?
The total number of the platform across, before it was IOC and after IOC, the total number that I'm tracking is 64 service members.
Okay. And then I'm guessing injuries as well? Have people survived these crashes?
The total number of fatalities that I'm tracking is 64 fatalities total and 93 injuries.
Admiral, is there any reason to believe tilt rotor technology is any less safe than traditional fixed wing or rotor aircraft?
Sir, thank you for that question. I'll answer from my capacity as airworthiness. More safe or less safe, my objective is to do an analysis of the data through the entire life cycle of a program to make it as safe as you possibly can. So whether or not one is more or less safe, it's interesting, but what I'm focused on is increasing the safety posture across all of our platforms and eliminate mishaps to the max extent possible by proactively managing each one of our aircraft. You asking if we had mishaps across the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Air Force, and the V-22?
You have. You have, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have had Class A's through D's across the different services with the V-22 program.
Right, and many more in the Marines expectation than in the Navy, correct?
Sir, I would not characterize as many more. The reason we establish a mishap rate, it's per 100,000 flight hours.
Right.
The Marines have many more aircraft, have flown many more hours than the Navy has so far. I would caution us all to make sure we're having apples to apples comparison.
Lieutenant Colonel Eric Cranford, the squadron commander where the most recent crash occurred, stated, quote, "We're looking at 750,000 flight hours of history making data-driven decisions," end quote. And so what we're looking for is more transparency in terms of this data. We want to know what y'all are finding out from it because transparency equals heightened scrutiny. And we need the heightened scrutiny right now as we've lost 20 service members in 1 year. So, Mr. Belk, your job is to ensure the readiness of the total force. So where does the fault lie for the mission readiness failures that GAO identified, and will you take responsibility for addressing them?
So, Congressman, I can assure you that the department at every echelon and every level takes very seriously matters of accountability upon understanding the facts and circumstances around a particular event, and then what, if any, steps need to be taken to either hold organizations or individuals accountable for errors or actions that need to be held accountable for. So upon understanding those circumstances and learning those events, you have my commitment that we will continue to do those things that need to ensure that accountability is meted out and addressed upon learning about the specifics in those instances.
Reported in 2022 that only 52% of Marine V-22s are ready to fly. 52%. Why were only half of Marine Ospreys mission capable?
Congressman, I would defer that question to Admiral Chebi, who I believe will have more specific details to share.
Admiral.
Sir, for the readiness of all the platforms under NavAir, a couple of years ago we started a journey, and we started it with the F-18.
So we're talking about the Osprey.
Yes,
we're
sir.
talking about 2022. I don't need a long, drawn-out history. We only have 5 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Please make your answer brief, concise, but accurate.
There are manning and training aspects and readiness aspects with the V-22 that keep the readiness levels where it is at the 50% that you quoted. There are actions in place today, and we're leveraging the learning we've had from all of our other platforms to increase the readiness levels across all of the type model series across naval aviation. We are on a good path. We will get there with V-22.
I'd like to know if you'll commit to give that access to members of this committee.
Congressman, it remains important to protect the safety privilege for those who participate in those safety investigations, to protect those investigations and ensure that the members who participate in them have the maximum amount of opportunity to know that the information that they provide in those safety investigations will remain confidential and not for further disclosure.
So you're telling us you're not going to allow members of this committee to have access to the results?
Congressman, we will continue to maximize the fullest transparency possible on the information contained in those investigations.
So here's the deal. You don't want to give us full transparency. You're going to give us whatever you managed transparency, but you want the money from the taxpayer to pay for this. You understand that that's ironic, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but that's disrespectful to this body. It is our obligation to oversee. That's why you're here. And you don't want to give us full access. I get it. You think somebody up here is going to leak. But the bottom line is you need to be held accountable. We need to see, because we need to know what's going to happen next with the program, because we're concerned about the mission capability. We're concerned about the men and women, the personnel who operate, maintain, work on these aircraft. And so when you tell us within range, we'll let you see some of it, it's disrespectful, and it makes me wonder how we're going to get the information, how will we make the policies that we need to make.
Mr. Kurtz, you mentioned earlier that we have a rework being done on the clutch. I think it's the Sprague clutch on this aircraft, and that it might be ready for deployment by mid-2025. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I said mid-2025, somewhere between the mid-period of 2025 and the third quarter of that fiscal year. Yes, sir.
Ground them now. We'll bite the bullet for the next year or so until we get this clutch figured out. But we've already had too much carnage. We've already lost too many good men and women that have, you know, they've joined for all the right reasons to serve their country, and then we have failed them by not providing them with safe aircraft. I don't believe this aircraft is safe. Nothing you have told me today leads me to believe that. I think it's still a very iffy situation, and I think you've conceded that fact. So it's crazy to put more of our young men and women at risk, and I'm asking you to ground this aircraft until we get the clutch figured out, and we'll find alternative measures to service the needs that we have that this aircraft was serving.
Mr. Belk, if an F-35 engine were to break down at sea on an aircraft carrier, what aircraft would the Navy use to transport that F-35 engine ashore to be fixed?
So I genuinely mean thank you for the question, because I do believe in this committee's oversight responsibilities, and I appreciate the opportunity to thank you for that.
Mr. Belk, come on. What plane would the Navy use to transport the broken F-35 engine?
Congressman, I don't know the answer. I'm happy to take it back and get
Thank you. Vice Admiral Chebi, do you know the answer?
And the question of what aircraft, the V-22 was designed as one of the requirements for the CMV-22 to
So the CMV-22 would be used. It's essentially one of the Navy's two kind of tow trucks. Can the C-2, the other kind of tow truck that the Navy flies, can it transport an F-35 engine?
To my knowledge, the C-2 cannot transport a F-35 engine. In that case, we would put additional spares on the aircraft carrier if we have to have it supported with the C-2. So
you would put additional spares. Okay, I'm going to follow up on that. So the C-2 cannot pick up the F-35 engine because the engine's too large. So we'd use the CMV-22. So the military didn't have the common sense to make F-35 engines transportable by all of the tow trucks it owns, so we're going to use only one of them, the CMV-22. So, Admiral Chebi, why did you not see this coming? Why did you buy F-35s that your infrastructure can't handle?
Ma'am, I'm here as the Naval commander from an airworthiness perspective to talk about the safety of the V-22. I'm going to have to direct that question back to the appropriate personnel to address the
Mr.
question.
Belk?
Congressman, I'll have to take that back to the department.
So you don't know why you bought F-35s for billions of dollars, and you don't have any airplanes, as we're about to see, that can actually pick up the broken engine and fix it.
The Army's preparing to launch the V-280 Valor program. I know I'm talking about the Army program here to replace the Black Hawk fleet. Now, we've learned a lot with the V-22, but apparently we haven't learned enough, whether it's like my good friend from Texas says, training, or whether it's the mechanics. Service members are dying, which is unacceptable. It's bad enough they die in combat, but it's unacceptable that they die either due to lack of training, complexity of the aircraft, or the aircraft itself. What lessons can any of one of you tell us that we have learned on the 22 that we're not going to replicate on the 280?
Sir, certainly, as you reference, it's an Army program. It is not a program that I have insight into with regards to my portfolio, so I can't speak to where we are with regards to the V-280 and what the Army is currently doing at this time.
What is the 22 going to be replaced with?
Sir, I am not aware of, at this point,
Admiral?
at this time, the service and plans for replacement of the V-22.
You're sure that the CMV-22 is, halfway through the production run, so it is a brand new aircraft. I'm not sure any plans right now are in place to replace the CMV-22.
Well, I will say this, Mr. Chairman, and then I'll yield back. I get it, and it is expensive halfway through the life cycle, but if we can't get it right, at some point we have to acknowledge we just can't get it right. This thing shouldn't fly because it's too dangerous. We get the concept. We would love to do it. It's awesome to look at. When it's working right, it's awesome. But it's not working right enough to accept, and there are other acceptable alternatives. And oh my God, even though we're in the Navy, we'll put a different coat of paint on this damn thing and call it some kind of Navy term and fly this 47 instead, or maybe even better, 53, highly capable in the Navy's program. Let's use that.
If there's no further business, without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.